Hello, everyone. You're sitting here at my house, and I am going to continue reading Esperanza Rising. So, last time we left off, they were on the train and they were coming to America because the dad died and the uncle was basically threatening them. So let's see what is in store for Esperanza and her family. So, yes, I still need the reading glasses. That has not changed. So, I hope everyone is well. Going to find where we left off and continue from there. If I start on a spot that we already got to, just bear with me. So, remember, they're on the train and they meet the lady with the chickens and all of that. So, let me see. And I miss you guys, by the way. So, I'll just start here. Okay, so bear with me. And welcome to my house, by the way. Esperanza had never been so close to many peasants before. When she went to school, all of her friends were like her. When she went to town, she was escorted and hurried around any beggars. Because remember, she was rich in Mexico, not rich anymore. And the peasants always kept their distance. That's simply the way that's simply the way it was. She couldn't help but wonder if they would steal her things. Mama, said Esperanza, stopping in the doorway, we cannot travel in this car. It is not clean, and the people do not look trustworthy. Esperanza saw Miguel frown as he edged around her to sit down. Mama took her hand and guided her to an empty bench where Esperanza slid over next to the window. Papa would have never let us sit here, and Abuelita wouldn't approve, she said stubbornly. Mija, it is all we can afford, said Mama. We must make do. It is not easy for me either. But remember, we are going to a place that will be better than living with Tio Luis. Anything will be better than living with him, let's be real. And at least we will be together. The train pulled out and settled into a steady motion. Hortensia and Mama took out their crocheting. Mama was using a small hook and white cotton thread to make carpetas, lace doilies, to put under a lamp or a vase. She held up her work to Esperanza and smiled. Would you like to learn? Esperanza shook her head. Why did Mama bother crocheting lace? They had no vases or lamperas to put on top of them. Esperanza leaned her head against the window. She knew she did not belong here. She was Esperanza Ortega from El Rancho de los Rosas. She crossed her arms tight and stared out the window. For hours, Esperanza watched the undaunted land pass in front of her. Everything seemed to remind her of what she had left behind. The nopales reminded her of Abuelita, who loved to pick the prickly pear cactus sliced and soaked in vinegar and oil. The dogs from small villages that barked and ran after the train reminded her of Marisol, whose dog Captain chased after trains the same way. And every time Esperanza saw a shrine decorated with crosses, flowers, and miniature statues of saints next to the rails, she couldn't help but wonder if it had been someone's father who had died on the tracks, and if somewhere there was another girl who missed him too. Esperanza opened her valise to check on the doll. Lifting it out and straightening her clothes, the barefoot peasant girl ran over. Mona, she said, and reached up to touch the doll. Esperanza quickly jerked it away and put it back in the valise, covering it with old clothes. Mona, Mona, said the little girl, running back to her mother, and then she began to cry. Mama and Hortensia both stopped their needles and stared at Esperanza. Mama looked across at the girl's mother. I am sorry for my daughter's bad manners. Esperanza looked at Mama in surprise. Why was she apologizing to these people? She and Mama shouldn't even be sitting in this car. Hortensia looked from one to the other, excused herself. I think I will find Alfonso and Miguel and see if they bought tortillas at the station. Now remember, Esperanza still thinks she's rich and hoity-toity and can't understand why she's even in this car with these people that aren't as rich or well off as her, and she doesn't realize she's the same way. So let's see what happens. Mama looked at Esperanza. I don't think it would hurt to let her hold it for a few moments. Mama, she is poor and dirty, said Esperanza. But Mama interrupted. When you scorn these people, you scorn Miguel, Hortensia, and Alfonso, and you embarrass me and yourself. As difficult as it is to accept, our lives are different now. The child kept crying. Her face was so dirty that her tears washed clean streaks down her cheeks. Esperanza suddenly felt ashamed, and the color rose from her face. But she still pushed the valise further under the seat with her feet and turned her body away from Mama. So she's kind of being a little spoiled brat, I think. Esperanza tried not to look back at the little girl, but she couldn't help it. She wished she could tell the little girl's mother that she had always given her old toys to the orphanage, but that this doll was special. Besides, the child would have soiled it with her hands. Mama reached in her bag and pulled out a ball of blanket yarn. Esperanza, hold out your hands for me. She raised her eyebrows and nodded towards the girl. Esperanza knew exactly what Mama intended to do. They had done it many times before. Mama wrapped the yarn around Esperanza's outstretched hands about 50 times until they were almost covered. Then she slipped a string of yarn through the middle of the loops and tied a tight knot before Esperanza removed her hands. A few inches below the knot, Mama tied another snug knot around all the yarn, forming a head. Then she cut the bottom loops separating the strands into sections and braided each section into what looked like arms and legs. She held the yarn doll up, offering it to the little girl. She ran to Mama smiling, took the doll and ran back to her own mother's side. The mother whispered into the girl's ear. Shyly, she said, Gracias, thank you. De nada, you're welcome, said Mama. The woman and the children got off the train at the next stop. Esperanza watched the little girl stop in front of their window, wave to Mama, and smile again. Before she walked away, she made the yarn doll wave goodbye. Esperanza was glad the girl got off the train and took the silly yarn doll with her. Otherwise, she would have been reminded of her own selfishness and Mama's disapproval for miles to come. Clickety, 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 the song of the locomotive and was momentous as they traveled north, and the hours seemed like Mama's never-ending ball of thread unwinding in front of them. Each morning the sun peeked over one spur of the Sierra Madre, sometimes shining through pine trees. In the evening it set on the left, sinking behind another peak and leaving pink clouds and purple mountains against the darkening sky. Sounds kind of pretty, huh? When people got on and off, Esperanza and the others changed their seats. When the car filled up, they sometimes stood. When the car was less crowded, they put their valises under their heads and tried to sleep on the benches. I think that would be pretty uncomfortable, but I mean, if you're tired, you're tired. I can understand that. It's like sleeping on a plane, I guess, but harder. At every stop, Miguel and Alfonso hurried off the train with the package. From the window, Esperanza watched them go to a water trough, unwrap an oilcloth and dampen the bundle inside. Then they would wrap it in the oilcloth again, board the train, and put it carefully back into Alfonso's bag. What is in there? Esperanza finally asked. Alfonso, as the train pulled away from yet another station, So she has no idea what's here, but they have to deliver it to America, whatever it is. So it's very special, and she's very nosy, and they're not going to tell her. You will see when we get there, he smiled, and a knowingly look passed between him and Miguel. Esperanza was annoyed with Alfonso for taking the package on and off the train without telling her what was inside. She was tired of Hortensia's humming and weary of watching Mama crochet as if nothing unusual were happening to them. But most of all, she was bored with Miguel's constant talking about trains. He chatted with the conductors. He got off every stop and watched the engineers. He studied the train's schedule and wanted to report it all to Esperanza. He seemed as happy as Esperanza was irritated, or irritable, but she's irritated too. When I get to California, I'm going to work for the railroad, said Miguel, looking anxiously towards the horizon. They had spread pieces of brown paper on their laps and were eating pepinos, cucumbers sprinkled with salt and ground chilies. I remember reading this part, and we said that sounded really good, but cucumbers with tahini. I have some cucumbers. I might have to have that later because it sounds good. I'm thirsty. Are they selling juice in the other car? Asked Esperanza. I would have worked at the railroad in Mexico, continued Miguel, as if Esperanza had not tried to change the subject. But it is not easy to get a job in Mexico. You need una plananca. See, I need you guys. A lever to get a job at the railroads. I have no connections, but your father did. Since I was a small boy, he gave me his word that he would help me, and when he would have kept his promise. He always kept his promises to me. At the mention of Papa, Esperanza felt that sinking feeling again. She looked at Miguel. He quickly turned his head away from her and looked hard out the window. But she saw that his eyes were damp. She had never thought about how much her papa had meant to Miguel. It dawned on her that even though Miguel was a servant, Papa may have thought of him as a son he never had. But Papa's influence was gone. What would happen to Miguel's dreams now? And in the United States, she asked quietly, I hear that in the United States, you do not need plananca. I know I'm saying it wrong. That even the poorest man can become rich if he works hard. They had been on the train for 4 days and nights when a woman got on with a wire cage containing 6 red hens. The chickens squawked and cackled, and when they flapped their wings, tiny russet feathers floated around the car. The woman sat opposite Mama and Hortensia, and within minutes she had told them that her name was Carmen, and that her husband had died and left her with 8 children, and that she had been at her brother's house helping his family with his new baby. Would you like dulces, sweets? She asked Esperanza, holding open a bag. Now, isn't this woman nice? She has 8 children, and she has to support them all by herself, and then she's still offering a stranger sweets on the train. That's sweet. Esperanza looked at Mama, who smiled and nodded her approval. Esperanza hesitantly reached inside and took out a square of coconut candy. Don't know why I couldn't say that. Mama had never permitted her to take candy from someone she didn't know before, especially from a poor person. Senora, why do you travel with hens? Asked Mama. I sell eggs to feed my family. My brother raises hens, and he gave these to me. And you can support your large family that way? Asked Hortensia. Carmen smiled. I am poor, but I am rich. I have my children. I have a garden with roses. And I have my faith in the memories of those who have gone before me. What more is there? Hortensia and Mama smiled, nodding their heads. And after a few thoughtful moments, Mama was blotting away stray tears. The 3 women continued talking as the train passed fields of corn, orange orchards, and cows grazing on rolling hills. They talked as the train traveled through small towns where peasant children ran after the caboose just for the sake of running. Soon, Mama was confiding in Carmen, telling her all that had happened with Papa and Tio Luis. See, I think Mama feels a connection with Carmen because they're both widows, and so they have something in common and understand each other. Carmen listened and made clucking noises like the ones of her chickens, as if she understood Mama and Esperanza's problems. Esperanza looked from Mama to Carmen to Hortensia. She was amazed at how easily Carmen had plopped herself down and plunged into intimate conversations. It didn't seem correct somehow. Mama had always been so proper and concerned about what she said and not said. In Aguascalientes, she would have thought it was inappropriate to tell an egg woman their problems, yet now she didn't hesitate. Mama whispered Esperanza, Mama whispered Esperanza, taking on a tone that she hadn't heard Mom use many times. Do you think it is wise to tell a peasant our personal business? Mama tried not to smile. She whispered back, It is all right, Esperanza, because now we are peasants too. Esperanza ignored Mama's comment. What was wrong with her? Had all of Mama's rules changed since she had boarded this train? When they pulled into Carmen's town, Mama gave her 3 of the beautiful lace carpetas as she had made. For your house, she said. Carmen gave Mama 2 chickens and an old shopping bag, and she tied them with string. For your future, she said. Then Mama, Hortensia, and Carmen hugged, as if they had been forever friends. Buena suerte, good luck, they said to one another. It didn't seem correct somehow. Mama had always been so proper and concerned about what was said and not said. In Aguascalientes, sorry, my Kindle did not switch the page. Hold, please. Here we go. Alfonso and Miguel wanted Carmen. Rewind once again. I think this quarantine is getting to me. Rewind, take 2. Alfonso and Miguel helped Carmen with her packages and the cage of chickens. When Miguel got back on the train, he sat next to Esperanza near the window. They watched Carmen greet her waiting children. Several of the little ones scrambled into her arms. In front of the station, a crippled Indian woman crawled on her knees, her hand outstretched towards a group of ladies and gentlemen who were finely dressed in clothes like the ones that used to hang in Esperanza and Mama's closets. The people turned their backs on the begging woman, but Carmen walked over, gave her a corn and some tortillas for her bag. The woman blessed her, making the sign of the cross. Then Carmen took her children's hands and walked away. She has 8 children and sells eggs to survive. Yet when she can barely afford it, she gave your mother 2 hens and helped the crippled woman, said Miguel. The rich can take care of the rich, and the poor can take care of the poor, of those who have less than they have. But why does Carmen need to take care of the beggar at all, said Esperanza. Look, only a few days away in the farmer's market with carts of fresh food. A few yards away. So this begging woman is in a market with these fresh foods, and there's all these rich people that are just looking at her and could care less. And here, the lady who barely has anything is the one reaching out, giving her food and giving her money. She's saying, just a few yards away there, so full of food. Why isn't anyone helping her? But would have Esperanza helped her if she was still rich? probably not. She would have looked at her as, oh, she's a peasant beggar, and went on. So maybe this is a hard little lesson for her. Miguel looked at Esperanza, wrinkled his forehead, and shook his head. There's a Mexican saying, full bellies and Spanish blood go hand in hand. Esperanza looked at him and raised her eyebrows. Have you never noticed, he said, sounding surprised? Those with Spanish blood, who have the fairest complexions in the land, are the wealthiest. Esperanza suddenly felt guilty and did not want to admit that she had never noticed, or that it might be true. Besides, they were going to the United States now, and it certainly would not be true there. Esperanza shrugged. It was just something that old wives say. No, said Miguel. It is something the poor say. Well, obviously, Esperanza probably has lighter skin, and she is more wealthy. And Miguel probably has darker skin, and he was the servant. So, she's now getting a reality check, I guess, and realizing that her whole world, her little bubble, she's kind of been sheltered because this is not how life really is, and this is not how it's going to be in America. So that one was guavas, and I'm sorry we didn't get to eat guavas or have guava juice. It was my intention to get some sort of guava, but it didn't happen. The next one is cantaloupes. So I will read that tomorrow, or read half of it, because, these chapters are pretty long. And maybe I'll see if Kimberly can get me a cantaloupe, because she works at Walmart and does my shopping for me since I'm basically quarantined. So if you've never seen a cantaloupe, then I'll cut it up and show you. But it'll probably take us 2 days to read this one. But I'm really excited because I get to read to you guys, and it still feels like I get to connect with you, and I miss you, and I hope you guys are all safe and healthy and happy, and I'm glad I get to welcome you into my home, and I will talk to you soon. Leave me a message, because I do miss you. So I said I wasn't going to cry, but darn it, I do. So until tomorrow, little ones, be safe, be happy, be healthy, read, do some sort of math, do something on the internet, go outside and breathe and look at the beautiful sky and listen to the birds. Take a walk. I'll see you tomorrow.